Everybody can hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. All right. We have got a lot to go over tonight. I'm a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of information that I want to give you tonight. I hope you're not overwhelmed. This is, it's taken me years and years and years to learn all of this. And so my goal is not to overwhelm you, but to give you the bare basics of incubating eggs and getting those eggs to hatch. That's our end goal with all of this. So in case I miss something that you want to learn, make sure that you take notes, and then if you have questions, make sure you put those questions in the chat so that we can get to them at the end of the meeting tonight. I don't want questions to go unanswered. If you have questions, please ask them. So as a quick recap, last time we were together, we talked about fertile versus non-fertile eggs and why the eggs you're getting may not be fertile. One of the most important things for fertile eggs is the amount of light that your chickens are getting. They need to have, like I say, I turn my lights on at 6 o'clock in the morning and the lights don't go off until 9 o'clock at night. So I want to mimic a full summer day. That's the amount of light that my chickens are getting after they take that very important break. The next one is nutrition. We talked about that at the very start. We talked about the importance of nutrition in getting fertile eggs. And then the one thing that we didn't talk about a lot was the age of your chickens. There's a common myth out there that a hen will only lay eggs for 3 years. That is a myth. A hen can lay eggs throughout her whole lifetime. Her most productive years are 1 through 4. It's not necessary for you to replace your hens every 3 years. As long as they're laying, you can keep those hens and keep using them. As they get older, they do tend to decrease the number of eggs that they're giving you. But I've got like I say, I've got an 8-year-old hen that still lays for me. So as far as the males go, age can affect a male in some breeds. For the most part, males are productive throughout their entire life. So a rooster can give you fertile eggs, can fertilize eggs through his lifetime. There are some breeds that isn't necessarily the case. They will stop after around 4 or 5 years old. So let's go down here let's get into our little fun pictures tonight. I've got a picture here. I can't remember if I showed you this last week or not. This is what if you break an egg open, this is what a fertile egg looks like. This little blastodisc that we talked about is going to be bigger. It's going to have kind of a bullseye around it. You'll be able to see a distinct darker ring around it, and sometimes you can see a light ring around it. This one is a non-fertile egg, and this one is a fertile egg. So just a reminder that that's what fertile eggs look like. So now we get into the gathering and storing of those eggs. You should gather your eggs every day. That's important to do that, especially in the wintertime. Eggs will freeze really fast if the temperatures dip below freezing. So you want to gather your eggs. If the temperatures are fairly cold, gather your eggs numerous times throughout the day. If the temperatures are warm, you can gather them once a day and be fine, but I would recommend gathering them at least once a day. When you store your eggs, waiting to get enough for you to put in your incubator, put them in an egg carton. The pointy end is going to go down in that egg carton. The big end will be up, the pointy end will be down. And then, like I said, tip that carton on an angle kind of like this, and then switch it out at least once a day. So back and forth like this, so that the yolk in there is moving. And not staying in one spot, and that will help to increase your odds of hatching that chick out. Store the eggs at a temperature of around 50 to 60 degrees. That's the perfect temperature for storing eggs. So if you've got a basement, that's a good place to put them in. A garage, as long as it doesn't get down to freezing temperatures in that garage, those are good temperatures to store your eggs at. And don't store your eggs for longer than 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, the hatchability drops a lot. The percentage of your hatch will drop if those eggs are older than 2 weeks old. So 1 to 14 days is the optimal time to store those eggs for incubation. Let's jump back down here, and I want to show you. So I've got a picture here. So I incubate eggs for people, and some people brought me these eggs to put in the incubator. Problem number one with these eggs is they are very dirty. The problem with dirty eggs in an incubator is it introduces germs and bacteria into your incubation system, which can cause eggs not to hatch. So down here, we have some poop on this egg. We have poop up here. There's some straw from the nesting box. This one's got a big piece of poop right here. That's pure bacteria that you're going to be putting into your incubator. The best thing would be to have clean material in your nesting boxes so that when a hen lays those eggs, they're staying nice and clean in that nest box. And then when you gather them, they're clean and ready to go. If you do happen to get an egg that has some poop on it or some dirt, I wouldn't worry about it if they look like this one or maybe even this one. But when we start getting into ones like this and this one over here, I don't like setting eggs that look like that. So instead of washing them with soap and water, I just take a little bit of sandpaper and gently brush off that dirt and that poop. We don't want to disturb the bloom that's on those eggs. That's the protective coating that's on those eggs that helps to prevent bacteria from getting into the egg. We don't want to wash that off, but I don't want all of that in my incubator. So I get some sandpaper and just take as much of that off as I can. All right, now we're going to start getting into what kind of incubators are the best to use. The very, very best incubator in the whole world is a mama chicken. She's going to do the best job at taking care of those eggs and giving you the best chance to get some chicks out. She has to go broody before she will sit on those eggs. So she goes through a change in her hormones that tells her it's time to sit on those eggs and sit there until they hatch. And she will sit on that nest for the whole day. They only get off once a day to eat and to drink and to poop, and then they go right back on their nest sitting on those eggs. Some hens go broody more than other hens. Some hens never go broody. It depends on the breed of your chicken. Most of your big heavy chickens like your Orpingtons or your Wyandots, they're going to go broody as opposed to Leghorns or like the sex lynx chickens that you get chicks from IFA, things like that. So if you've got a broody hen and you've got some eggs to put underneath her, she is the very best incubator in the world. She needs to have a good spot to set on those eggs, like in a box or underneath some kind of a cover so that she's protected. And then she needs to have food and water close by, and she needs to be out of the wind and the rain and the cold. Those are the perfect conditions for her to want to sit on those eggs and to hatch them. But she knows exactly what to do every day of the incubation process. If you don't have a broody hen and you do have an incubator, then you can still hatch out eggs. And there are so many different kinds of incubators out there that it's hard for me to tell you exactly what temperature. I can tell you the temperature, but the humidity might be different depending on what kind of an incubator you have. An incubator has to have something that warms the eggs up, a way to give humidity to those eggs. You have to be able to either turn those eggs by hand or the incubator turns them for you, and it has to have good ventilation. So I would say do your research. If you're looking to buy an incubator, do your research. I'm happy to help you. If you want to ask me, you can email me. I will have, I'm okay, Brandy, with you giving out my email address. If people want recommendations for incubators and things that I know of that work well. The incubator that I use is huge. It's called a cabinet incubator, and I can actually incubate around 200 eggs in that incubator at a time. And there's different levels on it so that I can put eggs in at different times. But that's for major production. I got to take a drink, hang on. There's also small tabletop incubators that work really well. There are some incubators that do not work well. And it's a waste of money to get them. So if you have questions on incubators, you can go ahead and ask me, and I'll see what I can do to help you out. I always recommend checking your eggs before you set them. Hold them up to a flashlight and make sure they don't have any cracks in them. Cracks, if an egg is fertile and it has a crack in it, there's a possibility that it will explode during the incubation process, and then you're left with a really yucky, stinky mess inside of your incubator. So you want to take care of those kind of eggs before you ever even put them in the incubator. The chicken eggs need to be incubated at 99.5 degrees for the first 18 days of the incubation process, 99.5 degrees. The humidity, I run mine around 50% for those first 18 days, 50% humidity. My incubator turns the eggs automatically, so I don't even have to worry about it. If your incubator is not turning those eggs, then it's up to you to go out and manually turn those eggs at least twice a day. Remember last time we got together, we talked about that little rope that's inside of an egg, and it's hooked onto the yolk. That needs to be kept as unbothered as possible. So when you are turning eggs, roll them back and forth like this. Don't keep rolling them over and over and over in the same direction, because that will actually twist that little tiny rope inside of that egg to the point where it can break or it can strangulate. So make sure that you're just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Don't go in the same direction over and over and over again. Ventilation is important because oxygen needs to get to those eggs. And we'll talk about that in just a minute, the importance of oxygen in those eggs. If the air inside of your incubator is not moving, it's not getting replaced, then it's going to become stagnant and stale air, and that is not good for the eggs while that chick is growing. All right, so now we're going to start the process of incubation. After you've put the eggs in the incubator and they've been in there for probably, I usually check around 4 days, but I know what I'm looking for. It's probably easier to wait for 7 days before you check your eggs. And you're gonna check those eggs for fertility. So let's come back down here and we're gonna go to this image. It is a little bit hard to see. This is a chick that's growing, and it is probably around 7 days old. So you can see this is the chick right here. And these veins are actually blood vessels that are coming out, and they circle around the yolk. Those veins do. The chick is growing on the yolk of the egg, which is very important. We'll discuss that in a minute as well. So you'll be able to tell a fertile egg by looking for these kinds of veins. An egg that is not fertile will have absolutely nothing in it after 7 days. There won't be any redness. It will just be, it'll either look like a really white color or a very pale yellow. There will not be any red in it at all. You can see the beginnings of the air cell down here. The air cell is going to get bigger as that chick grows. So that's another sign of a fertile egg, is you can see the air cell starting to grow. If you're not seeing this, you do not have a fertile egg and you will not get a chick. If you are seeing this, that means you have a fertile egg and that chick is growing, which is what we want, and it's very exciting. When you're checking your eggs, make it fast. You want to be careful and gentle with that egg while you're checking it, but you don't want to keep it out of the incubator for very long. And you don't want to handle it too much, because if we wiggle this new tiny life around too much, we can disrupt these blood vessels, and that will be bad for the chick. So when you're checking the eggs, do it gently but quickly. I use my cell phone as to look inside of it. Any kind of a bright light will do. Some incubators have the light built into them, so you just hold the egg in front of that light. A bright flashlight will work, but I have found that cell phone flashlights work the best for me. If you have any infertile eggs, you want to throw them out. If you have any eggs that have died during the incubation process, you want to throw them out. I don't have a picture. I should have gotten a picture of an embryo that has died. When they die, all of these blood vessels break down and they settle into a ring. So you'll just kind of have a dark ring right around here, and you won't have any of this stuff. And that's how you can tell that the embryo has died. If you're wondering whether it's alive or dead, then I usually err on the side of it being alive. And so I'll leave it in there in case it is alive, until I'm absolutely sure that it's not. Okay, let's go. I might want to go one more. Hang on just a second. Okay, so this little picture right here, I think it's a video. How do I get out of this now? Okay, could you see that video? Did any of you see that chick moving inside of there? Did you? Excellent. That's another good indication that that chick is alive, if you see it moving inside of there. And sometimes just the bright light is enough to make them move, because it startles them a little bit. And so that's a good indication that that chick is alive. So that's kind of fun to see. Okay, let's come over here. All right, we're gonna go to picture number 5. All right, so on this image, this takes you through every single day of the incubation process. This is day 1, and we've just got that little blastoderm. That fertile egg is starting to develop, but it's not doing very much at all. It just kind of hangs out there for day 1. So you can't tell if an egg is fertile or not until usually around day 4 is when I can tell. Each day, this little chick grows a little bit more and a little bit more. It doesn't even look anything like a chick until we get to day 8 or 9, and then you can start to tell that there's something growing in there that resembles a chick. For the first week, it's just blood vessels and a dark spot. When we get here to day 11 through 14, that's when you're going to be able to see that chick moving around more. I don't recommend checking your eggs very often. If you can check it once a week, that's adequate to make sure that everybody's still alive, to throw out anything that has died. So I know it's tempting to check your eggs every day and see how things are going, but once a week is adequate. When we get down here to day 19 and 20, do you see how that chick is taking up that whole egg? Things are getting pretty tight in there. It's running out of space. These drawings don't show the air cell. They don't show that the air cell's in there. There's an air cell that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every day. That air cell is very important. So I'm gonna show you some examples of that in just a minute.
Excuse me?
Yes.
When do they start growing feathers?
That's a very good question. Sometimes because I'm a curious person and I like to learn, so if I can tell that a chick has died recently, I will actually open up the egg to see why it died, if I can find a reason for it. We're not going to start getting into feathers until probably this stage right here, like day 14. Before that, it's just a pink little fleshy blob is what it is. You'll be able to see an eye and little nubbin feet, little nubbin wings, but it's not until we start getting into this stage here that the down starts to form. I don't know an exact day for you, but I know it's later on in the incubation process. These drawings are educational, but they're really not very accurate because this chick is actually upside down here. It's supposed to be the other way, and the air cell is not there. But that's a good question. When does the down start? All right, day 1 through 17, and this is where you can start taking notes because this is important. On day 1 through 17, the temperature and the humidity are going to be exactly the same throughout those 17 days. It's going to be 99.5 degrees, and your humidity is going to be around 50% inside of your incubator. The humidity is important so that the egg doesn't dry out. There's a lot going on inside of that egg that we don't ever see. And humidity and the oxygen are very, very important. So you might ask yourself, well, how does a mother hen provide humidity for those chicks? She uses her own body moisture to provide humidity. And she will also, she changes out the oxygen by lifting her body up off of that nest and by moving around. When she's turning the eggs, and she will turn the eggs multiple times a day, that's a good chance for new oxygen to come into the nest. It's a chance for fresh air, and it's also a chance for her to replace that moisture that has been, that needs to take place for those chicks to develop. On day 18, something very important happens. We need to stop turning those eggs on day 18. They now need to stay perfectly still, either in that incubator or in a hatcher. I actually take my eggs out of the incubator on day 18 and put them into a hatcher. And they stay still in that hatcher. This is a good time to check those eggs and make sure they're still alive, throw out anything that has died. Put them in the hatcher, and the temperature is going to drop by 1 degree. So now we're going to go down to 98.5 degrees when it's in the hatcher. Some incubators do this automatically for you. I was at a friend's house today, and her incubator does everything automatically. On day 18, it stops turning the eggs and it lowers the temperature. She doesn't even have to think about it. The incubator just does it for her, which is really quite neat that they've got incubators that will do that now. So drop 1 degree, the humidity stays the same. We still want to keep that humidity at 50%. And then on day 20, something else fascinating is taking place. That chick is now running out of room in that egg, and it's starting to feel pretty tight in there. This is where it gets complicated. The hatching of a chick is a miracle, in my opinion. So let's come down here. I've got this picture of the air cell. This is the change that takes place during the incubation process. So up here on day 1, this is how big that air cell is. Down here, this is on day 18 to 21. All of this is oxygen just before that chick hatches. That's how important oxygen is inside of your incubator, because the egg has to pull in oxygen in order to make this air cell get bigger. The chick is now in this area right here, so it's running out of room pretty fast. When the chick is fully mature inside of that egg, this is kind of what it looks like. This is actually a duck. It's not a chicken, it's a duck, but the concept is the same. It has to position itself exactly right to hatch. The beak has to be under this leg, and it has to be positioned so that the egg tooth, which is going to be right here at the end of the beak, is pointed towards the shell. Do you remember when we talked about how if you put pressure on an egg from the outside, you can't break it, but from the inside, it breaks very easily? That's so the chick can get out. I want to show you in this picture down here. See right here at the end of this little chick's beak and at the end of this little chick's beak, those are egg teeth. They have one purpose and one purpose only. That tooth is there to make the break from the inside of the egg. It's pointed, it's very sharp, and when the chick, and I'll get to this part in a minute, when the chick pushes up with that egg tooth on the inside of that shell, it breaks the shell. That's the only time this chick is going to need this egg tooth. After it hatches, after about a day and a half, that egg tooth falls off, and because it doesn't need it anymore. All right, so on day 20, we want to drop the humidity down to, I dropped 40% on day 20. And I do that so that the chick dries out, the inside of the egg dries out just enough that that chick can break into that air cell. It has to puncture that air cell so that it can start breathing all of that oxygen that's up in there. If the egg is too wet inside, the chick can't break through that air cell. So that's why we drop the humidity just a little bit. After it has broken through that air cell membrane and it starts to breathe that air that's inside of there, then we can raise the humidity, and it's actually very important to raise that humidity. So on day 21, after I know that that chick is in that air cell, I'll bump the humidity up to about 45. And that keeps the inside of that egg nice and moist so that chick can turn around inside of that egg. All right, so let's come down here again, and we're gonna go to...
Kathy,
Yes.
when you were telling us on day 20, you dropped the humidity, it glitched out. So what do you drop the humidity to?
I drop it down to 40%.
Okay.
On day 20, so that chick can get into the air cell. Did you hear all of that about the air cell and the importance of dropping that humidity and why?
No.
Okay. So we have to drop the humidity down so that the chick dries, the inside of that egg dries out enough that the chick can break through that membrane into the air cell. If the humidity is too high, that membrane is too wet, it can't break through into that air cell. So we drop the humidity down until it breaks through. And then when we know that it has broken through, and I'll talk about a couple of ways to do that, then we can bump the humidity back up to around 45 so that there's enough moisture for the chick to hatch.
And the temperature stays the same, 98.5.
98.5. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry about the glitch. Really quick here, I want to give you a rundown of how many days it takes for different birds to hatch before we get into the actual hatching process. Chickens, 19 to 21 days. I have a breed of chicken that hatches on day 19, which makes it very hard for me to manage my hatches, but I've got it figured out. Most chickens take 21 days. Ducks take 28 days or 4 weeks. Geese, 28 to 35. Guinea hens, if anybody raises guinea hens, they take 4 weeks or 28 days. Large fowl chickens, 21 days. Different breeds of ducks can take longer. So the Muscovy duck is 35. I don't know if anybody raises pigeons. Usually we don't incubate pigeon eggs because they're hard to raise after they hatch, but 16 to 18 days. And turkeys, I know there's a lot of interest in turkeys. Turkeys take 28 days or 4 weeks. Pheasants, most breeds of pheasants take 24 days to hatch. So if you want to, I'll keep that up for just a minute if you want to make some notes on that. And then we're going to get into the mechanics of hatching. What actually has to take place for this chick to get from inside of that egg to the outside of the egg. And again, it never ceases to amaze me what has to take place to make a baby chicken. It is a miracle, in my opinion. It is a fascinating process. Everything has to work out just perfect to get a baby chick. And I love it. Every time I hatch, and I've been hatching for many years, it's fascinating to me to see how these chicks do it. Has everybody got what they need from this list, or do you want me to keep it up a little bit longer? I think we're probably good.
Excuse me?
Yes.
What is the most common way for a chick to die?
A lot of chicks die if they have been weakened during the incubation process, or if they didn't get the good nutrition, if the parents didn't get good nutrition, that will cause the baby chick to die before it hatches. If the temperature is off, that can cause that chick to die. Either too cold or too hot, that can cause that embryo to die. Jostling that egg around too much can cause that chick to die. There's so many things that can cause it to die that there isn't just one thing that can make it happen. If I have a lot of chicks that are dying during the incubation process, it's a mystery and I want to get it figured out. And I have found that the thing that is the hardest on chicks is probably too cold of a temperature in that incubator. The incubator is not hot enough. And even 0.5 degree or 1 degree is enough to weaken that chick to the point where it dies. So it's really important that you keep that temperature right where it needs to be.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, so on between day 20 and 21, the chick's hanging out inside of that egg and things are getting pretty tight in there. It's grown to the point where there is no more room in there. It makes me a little bit claustrophobic to think about it. It breaks into that air cell, starts to breathe in all of that oxygen. That oxygen starts to run out. And when that oxygen starts to run out, the carbon dioxide starts to build up in the chick's system. And it causes the chick to actually go into a spasm or a convulsion. And the way that that chick is positioned inside of that egg, it makes its neck jerk. When that neck jerks, it causes that egg tooth to pip through the eggshell. So this is a picture of the very first pip. That egg tooth has penetrated the shell because that chick is running out of oxygen. and carbon dioxide is starting to build up in that chick's system, and it's causing it to have spasms. That's what has to happen for a chick to hatch. It has to run out of air. So this very first pip happens, and all of a sudden that chick has access to fresh air. So now it's just going to hang out for a while it breathes in that fresh air. And sometimes you'll think, why isn't it still hatching? Because it will sometimes sit there for a few hours before it does anything else. But it's just breathing that air and refreshing itself. Eventually, it starts to have spasms again. And as it is spasming, it's rotating inside of that egg. The spasms and the pressure of its legs and its head and its beak all working together cause that chick to go in a clockwise position around that egg. And each time it has a spasm, that egg tooth is penetrating that egg, and it's breaking that egg all the way around. I call it zipping. It's zipping all the way around that egg. I've got some really cool video for you of a chick hatching, so hang on for that. Let's come. We're going to go to this image now. This is just another image of a pip down here, brand new pip. So this chick's out. He's already done his hard work, and this little chick is just barely getting started inside of here. So it can take, it rests for like, I've had him rest for up to 6 hours after that first pip. And I'm like, come on guys, get with the program here. But they take their sweet time getting it done sometimes. So this is a chick that's just barely out of the egg. It's still all nice and wet. It's exhausted. When they hatch, they are literally exhausted. They have worn themselves out. And so then they just take some time to rest and to dry off. And but it's so much fun to see them at this point. Before the chick hatches, it draws the yolk, that yolk that it's been growing on for 21 days, it pulls that yolk into its body. And so that yolk is now inside of the chick. And that yolk is going to feed that chick for 48 hours. A chick does not need to eat for the first 2 days of its life because it's digesting that whole yolk that it's been growing on. And so it's good to hang out in the hatcher for 2 days. It doesn't need to eat or drink during those 2 days. All right, let's go to, this is the inside of the shell. After that chick is hatched, you can see this membrane. This is the membrane that it had to get through to get inside of the air cell. This is where the air cell was. You can see the remnants of some blood vessels. It's nice and pink in here. You can see how it hatched and broke through all of that. And this is the inside also. You can see right here, the chick will poop just before it breaks out of that egg. I don't know why it does that, but they always do. They leave some poop in there. It's kind of a mucousy nastiness that it just leaves inside of that egg. All right, so this is our end result of all of this fun stuff that we've been talking about. Doesn't need this anymore, so that's going to dry up and fall off. These chicks are pretty much all the way dried off, and they're ready to take out to the brooder. So cute. Okay, before I start this video, I want to see if I've missed anything. Okay, I don't know why it isn't playing. Hang on. All right, here we go. This is a time-lapse video. This is a black cochin chick that is hatching. So you can see it's worked its way around most of the egg. It's getting towards the end now. And there it is. I wish it happened that fast in real life, but it doesn't. Here's another one. This is a black Wyandot chick hatching. Its brothers and sisters are hanging out by it. It's important that we have good humidity for the hatching process. See this membrane right here? It has to stay nice and soft and moist in order for that chick to be able to turn around inside of that egg. If that membrane isn't nice and moist, that chick gets stuck inside of there. That membrane will glue itself to the chick, and the chick can't turn inside of that shell, and it gets stuck, and so then it can't hatch. So humidity is important. And then one last one here. All right. Fun stuff to watch. It really is. All right, it looks like we have close to about 15 minutes. So we'll take some questions. Get up here to the top. All right, a powerful flashlight is what you need to check for fertility. Do fertility checks. A powerful flashlight will work. And it's okay if I answer questions that you have, that's fine. We'll just review it because it doesn't hurt to hear things twice. What would cause it to die? The things that we talked about. A lot of chicks will make it to the point of breaking into that air cell. And that's, a lot of chicks will die before they ever break into that air cell. And the reason for that is too much humidity, and they can't break into there. Chicks that die after they've broken into the air cell, but they make a pip, they do that first pip, but they don't hatch, it's probably because the humidity is too low. It's such a complicated process. The humidity has to be just perfect all of the time for a chick to hatch. Again, it's a miracle that any of them hatch, but that's usually when most chicks die, is during that hatching process. And it's really kind of sad that they make it all the way to that point, and then that's when they die. How much money is an incubator? That is a good question. It depends on the incubator. Some incubators, the incubator that I have, the cabinet incubator, it's an older model. When it first came out, it was around $1,800. I didn't have to pay that much. It was given to me as a gift, and I was very grateful for it. You can spend $100 and get an incubator, but the ones that I have found that are around $100 aren't very good. And there's so many of them out there that it's important to do your research and find one that works. Usually, so there's a company out of Idaho that's called the Incubator Warehouse, and I will give you them as a good source for finding a good incubator. The styrofoam incubators that you find at like IFA or Tractor Supply are usually not good incubators. I have not had very many people tell me that they've had good luck with those. But the Incubator Warehouse, and I think their website is incubatorwarehouse.com, I think. But they have some good incubators. They have good styrofoam incubators that aren't very much money. I actually use their styrofoam incubators as my hatcher. I don't incubate in them, but I do use them to hatch my chicks. There's tabletop incubators that are good. Rolex is a good brand. Brinsea, B-R-I-N-S-E-A, is a good brand of incubator, and they have a whole bunch of different kinds. Anything with GQF, I think is what it's called. GQF manufacturers have good incubators. And again, they have small ones all the way up to the huge cabinet incubators. Yes, you need to fill up water for the humidity, and the answer to that question is yes. Some incubators have a big reservoir that you fill up once a week. Mine, I have a little cup in it that I fill up once a day, and I know exactly how much humidity. I've been doing this so long that I know exactly what size cup to use to give me the humidity that I need. So again, manufacturer directions are very important when you get your incubator to follow those manufacturer instructions to get the humidity and everything exactly where you want it. Are the chicks' eyes open right when they hatch? Yes, they are. I forget the exact term for chicks that are ready to go as soon as they hatch, meaning they have all their down, their eyes are open, and they can walk. Versus like a baby robin whose eyes are closed and they're naked and they can't do anything. They just sit there in the nest and wait for mom to bring food to them. That's why when chicks hatch, they don't need to have their mother to take care of them. They can be put in a brooder with food and water, and they know exactly what to do. It's always a good idea to dip your new chick's beak in water before you put it in the brooder so that it knows what the water is and where to find it. You just barely have to dip its beak into its little water bowl, and that's all you need to do to get them started off. But yes, their eyes are open. They are ready to go. Yes, they are very cute, aren't they? Cute, cute, cute. How much is it for me to hatch the chicks? I'm not sure I understand that question. Meaning, when I hatch chicks for other people, I do hatch chicks for other people, and I usually charge them $1 per live chick. And that way it's good incentive for me to get them as many chicks as I can, and it's worth it for me to hatch their chicks out for them. It kind of helps offset the cost of electricity and things like that. Some people I don't charge. It just depends on who it is that I am incubating for. When does the fair happen again? Are we talking fairs, or are we talking the chicken show that's coming up? The chicken show for the Utah Fancy Poultry Association is coming up in March, 11th, 12th, and 13th. The 13th of March is a good day to come to that show to see all of the chickens there. And again, it's in Ogden. When can they lay eggs? Like at what age? So it depends on the breed again. Some bantam breeds start laying eggs at 6 months. Some large fowl breeds don't start laying eggs until they're over a year old. So it just depends on the breed of chicken, the size of the chicken, whether they're meat birds or egg birds. Most bantam chickens, they're smaller chickens. They start laying around 6 months old. The term is, oh, thank you, precocial, is that how you say it? Excellent, thank you for whoever sent that information. Yes, that's what, and what's it called for the ones who can't? Who, do you know, Dale? Yeah, something oceal. Altrocial? Okay, yeah, meaning that like robins, they can't take care of themselves. Most of your chicken type birds, your pheasants, your ducks, your geese, swans, quails, they are all ready to go as soon as they hatch. They're good to go. They don't, as long as they've got food and water and protection, they can fend for themselves. Do chicks grow from the yolk or the white? They grow from the yolk. That blastoderm, it's called a blastodisc before that egg is fertilized. Blastoderm, after that egg is fertilized, they start growing from that blastoderm, and those vessels fan out over that yolk. And then when just before the chick starts its hatching process, it starts to pull that yolk up into its abdomen. And it seals off, its little belly button seals off. They don't have real belly buttons, but that part of their body seals off around that yolk just before they hatch. Yes.
Is it normal for baby ducks and chickens to peck at each other?
Yes, it is. Especially if they're too crowded in the brooder. We haven't talked a lot about the brooding process. They need to be in an area that is warm enough, but not too warm. They need to have a place where they can cool down. So sometimes people will put them in like these plastic totes, and they'll put a light above it. And that works great, except for the chick needs to have a place where it can go to cool down and then come back to the light when it gets too cold, and then cool off and then come back to the light. Chicks that are too crowded or are too hot or are too cold tend to not do very well. Chicks that are too crowded may start pecking at each other and causing injury to each other. Chicks that are too hot or too cold can get what's called pasty butt, where the poop starts to glom on to their bottom, and it actually plugs up so they can't poop, and it gets pretty serious and it's deadly. So it's important to check your chicks every day to make sure they don't have pasty butt. I use like baby wipes. I have baby wipes out in my brooder so that if I find a chick that has pasty butt, I can just clean it off gently with a baby wipe. And then I check to make sure that the temperature is okay. So, and some breeds are more inclined to peck at each other than other breeds are. If you find your chickens are pecking at each other, make sure they have enough food. Make sure that it's a good food so they're getting the nutrients that they need, and make sure that they have enough room, that they're not too crowded.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you. Do you charge more to hatch out the eggs if you provide the eggs? So right now, I'm hatching for myself, and so I don't use my eggs to hatch for anybody else. People bring me their eggs from their chickens, and those are the ones that I hatch out for them. Some people sell eggs that are already, that they know are fertile. So you can kind of watch for Facebook and things like that to see if people are selling fertile eggs. That's a good place to get fertile eggs. Some people do, like I could sell fertile eggs from my birds, but right now I'm not at a point where I want to do that yet. I'm just hatching out for myself, and I've got enough chicks out right now that I'm actually not hatching my chicks anymore. I've broken up my breeding pens, meaning that I've separated all of my chickens so that I'm not getting fertile eggs anymore. All right, somebody's chicken had pasty butt. It's a pretty common thing. It happens, and like I say, it can be deadly. If a chicken can't poop, that's not a good thing. So it's important to check your chicks every day and make sure that they're doing all right. A happy chicken is a quiet chicken. A chicken that's peeping all the time, making a lot of noise, seems in distress, there's something that isn't right in its environment. Usually when a chicken is crying a lot, making a lot of loud peeping noises, it means it's too cold. A chicken who, like I have found that chickens with pasty butts, they'll tend to peep a lot. They make a lot of noise, meaning that they're miserable. They don't feel good. If chickens are happy and content and their environment is perfect, they're quiet chicks. So that's a good indication that everything is well, is if your chicks are nice and quiet and they're growing well and looking good. That's a good sign. If you have open wounds, that can make them peck. Yes. And chickens are, we talked about how chickens are omnivores. They like vegetable matter and they like meat. If a chicken sees blood, a chicken's going to pick at that blood. It's what they do. And once they start picking and the bleeding gets worse, I've actually seen chickens kill each other and eat each other Chickens will do that. It doesn't happen very often, luckily, but if they see blood, they'll pick at blood. And so it's important to look for wounds and things like that and get on top of it early. There's a product called Blue Coat that you can spray on wounds that makes it so the chicken can't see, or the chick can't see the blood, can't see that red spot, and it'll make it so they don't pick at each other quite as much. We have a rooster with our hens. How do we know if eggs may be fertilized? And thank you. So if you can do like I showed you, where you break the egg open and you look for that bullseye on the yolk. But the problem with that is you can't put that egg back together and put it in the incubator. But it's a good indication if that egg is fertile, the other eggs that in that pen will probably be fertile. If that egg is not fertile, the rooster may need some longer days, longer daylight hours, or he may not be old enough, or he may be too old. So those are things to just consider when you're looking for fertile eggs. Another test is to put it in the incubator for 7 days and then check it to see if it's fertile. Some people do fertility checks with their eggs, where they just set a few, see if they're getting good fertility. If they are, then they start gathering all their eggs, and away they go. The eating of chickens or the opening up of the egg. The eating of chickens is mean. Yes, when chickens can be downright mean with each other. They really can. Chickens have a pecking order. There's a top chicken in the flock, and there's always going to be a bottom chicken in the flock. And as long as everybody knows their place and they're okay with it, then life is good. The bottom chicken, the one who's at the bottom of the flock, is going to be the one that gets picked on the most. And that's just the way it is. We can't do anything to change chicken behavior. Chickens are chickens. They're always going to have a pecking order. If you do have one chicken that's getting picked on by everybody else to the point where it's suffering, then it's time to do something about that. A happy flock is a flock that gets along, and yes, they each have their status, but nobody is bullying anybody else. So a bullied chicken should probably be separated from the rest of the flock and either find a new home for it or set it up in a home of its own. But when you separate a chicken from the flock, the whole pecking order has to start over again so that they can get things figured out, if that makes sense.
Does that apply for ducks?
It can apply. Most ducks are solitary. They don't live necessarily in flocks. So they're more of a solitary bird. But ducks that do live in a community group, they may establish a pecking order as well. Why is my rooster huge? Probably because he's a big rooster. It depends on his breed. I have seen some roosters that get absolutely huge. So it just depends on his breed. If he's overweight, then you need to do something about slimming him down a little bit. But there's nothing wrong with having a huge rooster. He's probably a good protector of his flock. If he's attacking you and he's a big rooster, that's a different story, because sometimes roosters can get pretty ornery themselves, and especially if they're big birds, it can be a problem. How do you introduce new chickens to your old chickens, and is it possible? It is possible. So with chicks that are getting to the age where you want to introduce them into the flock, it's usually best to set them up in an area where everybody can see each other, but they can't get to each other. That's not always a possibility in reality, because we don't have that many pens. So I usually introduce new chickens at night. After everybody's gone to bed, I'll slip the new chickens into the pen. When everybody wakes up, oh, hey, there's new chickens here, wonder when they got here, but it's fine, because they just appeared overnight, and it tends to make things go a little bit easier to introduce new chickens at night. It's usually a good idea to introduce more than one chicken in with an established flock. That way there's protection in numbers. So this little group of chickens that knows each other will kind of hang out together and the older chickens will know that they're there, but they won't necessarily bother them because there's more than one. And eventually they get everything worked out, and everybody's happy to be there together. How do you stop the rooster from attacking you? Another good question. I've had roosters that it didn't matter what I did, they didn't stop, and they eventually ended up in the soup pot, because I can't have mean roosters around my grandkids. So there are things that you can try. Some people recommend picking up the rooster and carrying it around with you while you do chores, like tucking it underneath your arm. And that way it starts to learn that you're the boss, and it is not the boss. I don't have a lot of patience with mean roosters. I just don't. So they either get it figured out, or they don't stick around my farm very long, because it's not worth somebody getting hurt. I've seen roosters can do some damage, and it's not worth that for me to have them around. So it's worth trying. It's worth trying to get them to settle down and to not be mean. But if they're not going to stop, then they don't live here for very long. All right. Any other questions?
Can you introduce ducks and chickens?
Yes, you can. You can. Ducks and chickens actually get along quite well. The only problem that I have ever seen that comes from it is ducks are kind of messy, and they can make a mess out of their environment, their pen. And chickens don't necessarily like walking around in mud and yuck like ducks do. And it can actually affect the laying of your chickens if they're in that kind of an environment. But on big open areas where everybody has more room to walk around, ducks and chickens can actually get along really well.
Can you also introduce geese?
Depends on the breed of geese, because I know some geese breeds that can be pretty mean, and they will not put up with chickens or ducks or anything. Geese are probably best kept by themselves. That would be my uneducated opinion. I've never raised geese, but I do know their personalities, and they're more of a, we just want to hang out with each other as opposed to hanging out with chickens or ducks. Can turkeys live with chickens? Yes, turkeys can live with chickens. Turkeys are actually a very docile breed. For the most part, turkeys are pretty gentle and easygoing. So yeah, turkeys and chickens can, and again, going back to our very first meeting, turkey poop has a lot of benefits. That is good for chickens to be around. They've done studies and found out that turkey poop prevents Marek's disease in chickens. So they actually recommend that if you have a flock that is prone to Marek's disease, that you get some turkeys to live with your flock to kind of help build up immunity in your chicken populations. So it's quite interesting. Anything else? All right. Do turkeys protect chickens? I think they probably could. Turkeys are pretty protective of each other. I don't know that they would see the chickens as their kids or anything and want to protect them that way, but they protect the flock, and if the chickens are part of the flock, then yeah, turkeys would protect chickens to a certain extent. So Brandy. Is Brandy there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right. So I think we've covered just about everything that I have to cover. We've gone through everything that I had. So I had on my schedule to do one more, but I think we're good. But certainly, if anybody has any questions that we have not answered that you really want answered, my email address is kathyashcroft@yahoo.com, and I am happy to answer questions that anybody has at any time. Sometimes it takes me a while to get to my emails, but if you have a pressing question that you need an answer to, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to see you at the show in March. Again, come introduce yourself to me so I know where you know me from, and I'd be happy to show you around as much as I can. So this has been so much fun for me. I have enjoyed every minute. I hope I was able to help somebody out with their chickens.
Kathy, will you email us the flyer, a copy of the flyer?
I think Brandy was going to do that. Did you get that, Brandy, when I sent it to you?
I did, and I actually forgot to attach it to the meeting link for this week. So
Okay.
I will send it.
Okay. Do you still have it? Do you still
I
have
do.
that flyer?
It's in my email.
Okay, perfect. Yep, she'll get that out to you so you know the address and everything and the dates. I recommend coming on Saturday. That's going to be the best day for the public to come. And there's going to be an auction. Hopefully there will be some birds in the auction. So if you are looking for birds, that's a good place to pick up some good birds. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. I have so enjoyed this.
Kathy, we appreciate you so much. You have been so helpful and your knowledge is just amazing. We are very grateful that we have been able to have you share some of that knowledge with us. So thank you so much.
It's been a privilege.
We will meet next week. We've got a little video that we want to share with you that Jen, do you want to just preface the video that we're going to share next week?
Sure. So my niece and my nephew are FFA chicken people. I guess that's what we want to call it. Anyway, they have created a video for us about some of their experiences and some of their knowledge, and they are willing to share that to us. I have it. I just have to figure out how to get it to you, Brandy.
Yep. So
I may have to just airdrop.
We will be sharing that next week, and then if we can get the turkey experts here, we'll start into the turkeys, and if not, then we'll go into one more class for the turkeys. I know that they do have a conflict for our next meeting time, but we will. If they can get somebody to replace them, then they will be here. And if not, then we'll go for one more time. So we will be meeting next week. And Kathy, you're welcome to join us if you'd like to.
I might. Real quick, somebody asked a question about Merrick's disease. So I want to get to that before we close. They say their chicken might have Merrick's disease, but it's not getting worse. As long as it's not getting worse, your chicken might recover. It would be unusual for a chicken to recover, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. So separate it from the rest of your flock if you haven't already, just in case it is Merrick's disease. It will keep the other birds from getting it. Tend it as much as you can, and hopefully it doesn't get any worse, and hopefully it gets better. So I hope it's not. I hope it's not Merrick's disease. I really do. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Brandy.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll get that flyer sent out to everyone, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks, guys. Good night.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Question though. No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.